Right now, in this quiet space where your breath is rising and falling, I want you to notice something subtle but profound. Beneath the noise of your thoughts, beneath the planning, the replaying, the worrying, there is a stillness that has always been there. It has been there through every heartbreak, every fear, every night when sleep would not come. That stillness is not disturbed by your problems. It does not panic about tomorrow. It does not regret yesterday. It simply is. And that stillness is who you truly are. Most of your suffering has never come from what happened to you. It has come from what you kept holding on to long after the moment had passed. Worry is not a requirement of love. Anxiety is not proof of responsibility. Control is not the same thing as care. Yet somewhere along the way, you were taught that if you stopped worrying, everything would fall apart. That if you loosened your grip, life would punish you. And so you learned to clench your fists around the future, to rehearse disasters that never arrive, to carry burdens that were never yours to carry. But let me gently remind you of something your soul has always known. The universe does not need your anxiety to function. God does not need your worry to perform miracles. Infinite intelligence was shaping galaxies long before you had your first fearful thought, and it will continue long after every concern you have today has dissolved back into memory. Worry is not humility. It is a quiet form of mistrust. It is the ego's way of saying, I know better than life itself. And the ego is very convincing. It whispers, if you don't think about this constantly, something terrible will happen. It tells you that vigilance is wisdom, that tension is strength, that rest is dangerous. But the ego has never created peace. It has never healed a wound. It has never opened a door that love could not open more gracefully. The ego thrives on effort, on strain, on separation. The soul thrives on surrender. Giving it to God is not an act of passivity. It is the highest form of intelligence. It is the recognition that there is an order to life far greater than the one you can orchestrate with fear. When you give something to God, you are not abandoning it. You are placing it into hands that can actually hold it. You are saying, I trust the wisdom that created me to guide what concerns me. Notice how nature never worries. The tree does not strain to grow. It does not panic in winter, wondering if spring will return. It releases its leaves without grief, trusting that life knows what it is doing. The river does not anxiously calculate every turn. It flows, and in flowing, it arrives exactly where it is meant to arrive. You were not created to live beneath the level of the trees and the rivers. You were created from the same intelligence that moves them. The moment you stop worrying, something extraordinary happens. Your energy returns to you. The power you were leaking into imagined futures comes back into the present moment where it belongs. And in the present moment, solutions appear that could never emerge from fear. Clarity does not shout, it whispers. And you can only hear it when you are quiet inside. Worry keeps you hypnotized by time. It drags you backward into what cannot be changed or pushes you forward into what does not yet exist. Peace lives nowhere except now. Healing lives nowhere except now. God lives nowhere except now. When you step fully into this moment, you step into the only place where miracles can occur. You may say, but you don't understand my situation, and you are right, not at the level of detail. But I understand something deeper. I understand that no problem has ever been solved by the same level of consciousness that created it. You cannot think your way out of fear using fearful thinking. You cannot worry your way into peace. The mind that worries is like a muddy pond. The more you stir it, the less you can see. Stillness is what allows the mud to settle so the water becomes clear. Giving it to God is the act of stepping back from the pond and letting it settle. It is saying, I release my need to control outcomes. I release my belief that my worth is tied to how well things turn out. I release the illusion that I am alone in this. And when you release, you make space. And space is where grace enters. There is a quiet law of the universe that always responds to your inner state. When you move through life as though everything is a threat, life feels threatening. When you move through life as though you are supported, guided, and held, life begins to reveal that support in ways that feel almost magical. Not because the universe changed, but because you did. You are not here to prove anything. You are not here to earn love through struggle. You are not here to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You are here to remember who you are. And who you are is not the worrier, not the fixer, not the one who lies awake rehearsing conversations and catastrophes. Who you are is the awareness watching those thoughts come and go. Once you see this, you begin to understand that you are not your fears, you are not your doubts, you are not even your past. You are the presence in which all of those experiences appear. And that presence is untouched by what passes through it. This is why letting go is not loss, it is liberation. Forgiveness arises naturally when you see this. You stop resenting life for not matching your expectations. You stop blaming yourself for not being perfect. You stop demanding that the past be different. There are no justified resentments, because resentment assumes that life made a mistake. Life does not make mistakes. It makes experiences that awaken you. Every challenge you face is not a punishment, but an invitation to trust more deeply, an invitation to release more fully, an invitation to stop trying to be the manager of the universe and start being a participant in its wisdom. When you accept this invitation, you feel lighter. Not because your circumstances instantly change, but because you are no longer fighting them. And here is the great paradox. When you stop worrying about outcomes, outcomes improve. When you stop chasing approval, you become magnetic. When you stop trying to force life, life begins to cooperate. This is not magic, it is alignment. It is the natural result of moving with the current instead of against it. You are a divine being having a human experience. That is not a metaphor, it is a fact of consciousness. The same intelligence that beats your heart without your instruction knows exactly how to guide your life when you stop interfering with fear. Trust is not something you force, it is something you remember. So the next time worry arises, do not fight it. Fighting gives it energy. Simply notice it. Thank it for trying to protect you, and then gently place it back into the hands of God. Say, "This is not mine to carry," and feel the subtle shift that follows. That shift is the beginning of peace. Healing always begins within, not when the world changes, but when you do. Not when everything is resolved, but when you stop demanding that it be resolved before you allow yourself to breathe. Inner freedom is not the absence of problems, it is the absence of resistance to life. When you live this way, life becomes less of a battle and more of a dance. You still take action, but it comes from clarity, not panic. You still plan, but without attachment. You still care deeply, but without fear. And in that state, you become a channel through which something far greater than you can move. Give it to God. Not someday, not when you have exhausted yourself completely. Give it now. Give the fear, give the resentment, give the unanswered questions. Give the heavy story you keep telling yourself about who you are and what is possible for you. And as you give, notice how much room opens inside you. In that space, you will feel it. A quiet knowing, a gentle assurance. The soul always knows. It knows you are supported. It knows you are guided. It knows that nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal needs to be defended. And when you live from that knowing, everything changes. Not all at once, not in the way your ego demands, but in the way your soul recognizes as truth. Doors open, people appear, insights arrive. And you realize that what you thought was impossible was only impossible for the version of you that was trying to control everything. The moment you stop worrying is the moment you step into partnership with life. And in that partnership, miracles are not rare events. They are the natural expression of trust. And as you remain in this partnership with life, something even more subtle begins to unfold within you. You start to notice that peace is no longer something you are chasing. It is something that follows you. It arises not because circumstances have suddenly become perfect, but because you are no longer asking them to be. You begin to sense that peace was never hidden in the future, waiting for conditions to align. It was waiting in you, patiently, while you learn the exhausting lesson that control does not equal safety. There is a quiet maturity that comes when you stop asking life to prove itself to you. You stop demanding guarantees. You stop negotiating with the unknown. Instead, you meet uncertainty with a kind of reverence, recognizing that the mystery you fear is the same mystery that breathes life into you. The unknown is not an enemy, it is the womb of all creation. Every miracle you admire was once an uncertainty no one could explain. When you truly give it to God, you are not saying, "I give up." You are saying, "I give in to something wiser than my fear." You are acknowledging that your limited perspective cannot possibly comprehend the infinite patterns at work on your behalf. This is where humility transforms into strength. This is where surrender becomes power. Not the power to dominate life, but the power to flow with it. And in this flow, you begin to feel guided rather than pushed. Decisions no longer feel like battles in your mind. They emerge naturally, almost effortlessly, from a deeper place within you. You may still weigh options, still consider consequences, but there is less noise, less urgency, less panic. You act from alignment instead of anxiety, and that changes everything. When action comes from alignment, it carries a quiet authority that resistance can never match. You may notice that some of the things you once prayed desperately for no longer seem so urgent, not because you have given up on your dreams, but because your sense of identity is no longer attached to their arrival. You realize that your worth was never waiting on a result. You were whole before the answer came. You are whole even if it never does. This realization alone dissolves years of inner tension you didn't even know you were carrying. The ego thrives on becoming. The soul rests in being. When you live from being, you discover that fulfillment is not postponed, it is present. It is woven into the simple awareness of existing, of breathing, of witnessing life unfold. You stop measuring your days by what you achieved and begin to value them by how deeply you were present. And presence, more than effort, is what heals. From this place, compassion naturally expands. You stop seeing others as obstacles or threats and begin to recognize them as fellow travelers, each doing the best they can with the level of awareness they have. Judgment softens. Comparison fades. You no longer need to elevate yourself by diminishing anyone else. When you know who you are, there is no competition, there is only connection. You also begin to understand that patience is not waiting, it is trusting. It is the deep knowing that life unfolds at the exact pace required for your awakening. You see how rushing has always been an attempt to outrun discomfort, while patience invites wisdom to catch up with you. In patience, timing reveals itself. Doors open not because you forced them, but because you arrived ready. And readiness has nothing to do with perfection. It has everything to do with openness. When you are open, you are teachable. When you are teachable, life becomes your guide instead of your adversary. Every experience, pleasant or painful, carries information meant to expand you. Nothing is wasted when you are awake. You may find yourself grieving the years you spent worrying, the energy you gave to fear, the nights you sacrificed to imagine futures. Be gentle with yourself. That grief is not regret, it is integration. It is the soul acknowledging how far you have come. There is no need to condemn your past self. That version of you was learning, surviving, doing the best it knew how. Gratitude, not guilt, is what completes the lesson. As worry loosens its grip, gratitude naturally takes its place. Not forced gratitude, not spiritual bypassing, but a quiet appreciation for the unseen support that has always carried you. You begin to notice how often you were protected without realizing it, how many times life redirected you away from what you thought you wanted toward what you truly needed. In hindsight, grace becomes obvious. And this awareness deepens your trust, not a blind trust, but an experiential one, a trust rooted in lived understanding rather than hopeful belief. You trust because you have seen, again and again, that when you stop interfering with fear, something benevolent steps forward. Something that does not shout or demand credit, but simply arranges, aligns, and unfolds. This is the point where faith stops being an idea and becomes a state of consciousness. You no longer need constant reassurance. You feel anchored. Even when emotions rise, even when uncertainty appears, there is a steadiness beneath it all that remains untouched. You have discovered your inner home, and from this home, you live differently, you speak more truthfully, you listen more deeply, you rest without guilt, you say no without explanation, you say yes without fear. Life becomes less about proving and more about expressing. You allow your unique presence to be enough. This is the miracle that follows surrender. Not that life becomes perfect, but that you become free. Free from the tyranny of worry. Free from the illusion that you are alone. Free to experience life as it is, rather than as your fears predict it will be. So remain here, in this knowing. Let it settle into your body, into your breath, into the quiet spaces between your thoughts. You are held, you are guided. You are part of something infinitely intelligent and infinitely kind. And as you continue to give it to God, moment by moment, you will find that what once felt impossible begins to unfold with an ease that can only be described as grace. And grace, once recognized, begins to educate you in ways no struggle ever could. It teaches you that effort is not the same as force, that devotion does not require exhaustion, that faith is not proven by how much you endure, but by how deeply you trust. You start to sense when to move and when to wait, when to speak and when silence is the most loving response. Life becomes less reactive and more responsive, guided by an intelligence that does not rush and never arrives late. You begin to feel a gentle confidence growing inside you, not the loud confidence of the ego that needs to announce itself, but the quiet certainty that comes from alignment. This confidence does not depend on praise. It does not collapse under criticism. It is rooted in knowing that you are connected to something that cannot be diminished by opinion or circumstance. When you know this, you no longer seek permission to be at peace. There is a sacred simplicity that emerges as worry fades. You find joy in ordinary moments you once rushed past. A conversation becomes a meeting of souls rather than an exchange of agendas. A walk becomes communion rather than distraction. Even stillness, once uncomfortable, becomes nourishing. You realize that presence was never boring. It was only unfamiliar to a mind addicted to noise. In this simplicity, you also discover discernment. You no longer give your energy indiscriminately. You sense when something resonates with truth and when it drains you. This is not judgment, it is wisdom. Your inner guidance becomes clearer because it is no longer drowned out by fear. You trust your intuitive nudges, the subtle pulls that don't make logical sense but carry a deep rightness within them. And when challenges arise, as they inevitably will, you meet them differently. You no longer ask, why is this happening to me? You ask, what is this inviting me to see? Curiosity replaces resistance. Acceptance replaces tension. You stop interpreting obstacles as signs of failure and start recognizing them as thresholds. Every threshold requires a letting go of who you were so you can step into who you are becoming. This is where real transformation occurs. Not in dramatic breakthroughs, but in quiet shifts of perception. You stop identifying with the voice that says you are behind, unprepared, or unworthy. You recognize it as a conditioned echo from a past that no longer defines you. And in that recognition, its power dissolves. Awareness is always the beginning of freedom. As freedom deepens, love expands. Not the conditional love that bargains and withholds, but the expansive love that allows. You begin to love yourself without qualifiers, without needing to fix or improve before you are deserving. This self-love is not indulgence, it is alignment with truth. From it flows a natural kindness toward others, unforced and unperformative. You also begin to understand that giving it to God does not mean disengaging from life. It means engaging from a deeper place. You still show up, you still care, but you do so without attachment to how things must turn out. This non-attachment is not indifference. It is trust in the intelligence of life to arrange what you cannot foresee. In this trust, timing reveals its perfection. What once felt delayed now feels protected. What once felt denied now feels redirected. You see how certain doors needed to remain closed so others could open. You see how what didn't work out spared you from paths that would have taken you away from yourself. Gratitude becomes less about counting blessings and more about recognizing wisdom in disguise. And as this recognition stabilizes, fear loses its authority. It may still visit, but it no longer commands. You observe it without obeying it. You listen without surrendering to it. Fear becomes information rather than instruction. This is a profound shift. It marks the moment when you stop being driven by survival and start living from truth. Truth does not shout. It resonates. It feels calm, expansive, and grounded. When you act from truth, you feel aligned even if the path is uncertain. You feel supported even when outcomes are unknown. This is how you know you are living from your soul rather than your conditioning. And here is the quiet miracle that unfolds from this way of being. Life begins to meet you where you are. Opportunities appear without force. Relationships deepen without manipulation. Solutions emerge without struggle. Not because you earned them through effort, but because you allowed them through trust. You realize then that worrying was never protecting you. It was delaying your recognition of how supported you already are. The moment you stopped worrying, you did not become careless. You became conscious. You stepped out of fear and into participation with something infinitely wiser than control. So continue to give it to God, not as a one-time gesture, but as a living practice. Give the moment as it arises. Give the uncertainty as it appears. Give the need to know how it will all turn out. And each time you do, feel yourself soften, expand, and return to the truth of who you are. You are not here to manage life. You are here to experience it, to learn from it, to be shaped by it in ways that reveal your deepest wisdom. And as you live from this understanding, you will see that the impossible was never impossible. It was simply waiting for you to stop worrying long enough to let it happen. And now, as all of this settles into you, there is nothing left to chase, nothing left to prove, nothing left to fix in order to be worthy of peace. You can feel it, perhaps for the first time without effort, that gentle sense of arrival that does not depend on circumstances. It is not excitement, it is not relief, it is recognition, a remembering of what has always been true beneath every layer of striving. You were never meant to wrestle with life. You were meant to be in conversation with it. A quiet, sacred dialogue where listening matters more than insisting, where trust speaks louder than fear. When you stop interrupting this dialogue with worry, life responds with clarity. Not always answers, but direction. Not always certainty, but guidance. And that is enough. There is a deep kindness at the center of existence, and it has never been withholding itself from you. It has only been waiting for you to stop arguing with the moment long enough to feel it. This kindness is not sentimental. It does not rescue you from growth. It supports you through it. It does not remove every challenge. It removes the belief that you are alone within them. As you rest into this understanding, notice how the body responds. The shoulders soften. The breath deepens. The nervous system remembers safety. This is not imagination. This is alignment. When the mind releases its grip, the body remembers how to heal. When the soul feels trust,